Hey, Jim.
Marcos?
Ready to rock?
No, but I am ready to do a podcast.
Oh, okay, good. Let's do a podcast. Hi, I'm Marcos de Jesus, aka Marcos de la Guagua, and I got a new album out.
What's it called?
It's called The Mind Game Aspect.
I think we're ready to do a show. Boom. I'm your host, and
This is the Nog Pod with Jim Noguera. It is the Nog Pod with Jim Noguera. Most interested man. It is the Nog Pod with Jim Noguera. The most interested man in the world. In the world.
Welcome to the pod. I really enjoyed talking to my friend, fellow artist and educator, Marcos de la Guagua, about his new album, The Mind Game Aspects. We listened to snippets of different songs from the work. And if you like Lin-Manuel Miranda, you'd probably dig Marcos too. He had lots of interesting things to say about his influences and the meaning behind his music. During the second half or so, we discussed a wide range of topics, including, though not limited to, mental health, Hispanic identity, what word to use to refer to those within this community, cultural appropriation, identity politics, reparations, and UBI. I hope you enjoy it. And now, Marcos de la Guagua.
here we are, once again. Jim Nog Pod.
Jim Nog Pod.
My brother from another mother. We must share some ancestry. There have been people having sex in the past that we share in common at some point. I mean, we all share.
We all, yeah.
Yes. I'm just saying. You're what, Puerto Rican German?
Yeah, Jamaican, aka Puerto Rican, via the Bronx for since my grandmother's generation, and German American via Freistadt, little farm community with a church and a cemetery and a tavern for 100 years or so, 150 years on my mom's side.
So you have this new album out, and I've been.
So I've been saying out. It's not out. It may be out when this comes out. Probably not. But it's coming. It's finished, and it's imminent. It truly is imminent now.
Well, that sounds even more enticing. I mean,
the new album.
It is imminent. I've heard some of it, and
maybe only to English professors, but thank you.
Yeah, I've heard some of it, and it's really dope.
Thanks, Rob.
If you are a fan of, what would you say, hip hop, gospel? I know you dropped Lin-Manuel Miranda. As somebody who I think you said on the first podcast, if you dig him, most likely people would dig you too.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've got a little burn rhyme about that.
A little burn rhyme.
Ready for this,
Mr.
Mr. Miranda?
Did you want it? Yeah.
I keep hearing, hey, he's like Lin, but more, how do you say, classically attractive. Less well known, but about the same years active. We share a flair for drama, herencia bonicana, and if you hear this, I'm just playing. You good looking, mi pana. But I was convinced my work had no audience till Lin broke through with like values and like mind. Gracias, hermano. You've been a lifeline.
Boom.
Hey. So,
nice.
I guess one thing that my project and Lynn has in common with Lynn's project is this kind of exploratory search for, well, I guess for like truth, for learning in a dramatic context, right? So you a lot of the drama, like in the Heights, in a sense nothing happens, right? So Usnavi wants to go home to his island, and then, spoiler alert, he decides that I found my island. I've been on it the whole time, right? So he decides Manhattan is his island, and but he goes through like a dramatic, journey to learn that. And I think a lot of my work is on different scales, so far mostly smaller scales than that, but some pretty big scale things. In a sense about learning, but going through that journey dramatically. And I because that's kind of, I feel like the most important things that I've learned in life have a certain costly grace to them. That's a term that Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the pacifist theologian who became involved in the Valkyrie conspiracy to assassinate Hitler, would use. That authentic grace and authentic relationship with Jesus was gracious, which means a gift, right? A free gift, but also costly. And yeah, so anyhow, kind of this struggling journey towards enlightenment is what the mind game aspect is about.
What song do you want to maybe highlight first?
I definitely would like to start with the title track. On the album, it's divided up between an intro and the core of the song, because a lot of the times, the second time you listen to the song, you might not want to listen to the intro. So anyhow, but I'd like to listen to them together, and so I group them together.
So the first, I'm sorry. So like, so on the album, so it's like, is it like they're separate tracks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first question about the shell game starts the intro, and then how much of your struggle is in the flesh, and how much is the mind game aspect. That starts the song per se.
Dope. Okay, let's listen to the title track off of the upcoming. If you're listening to it by now, I think it's probably out. It's out-ish.
If not, pray for me, please.
Okay, let's listen.
Have you ever played a shell game?
You know what that is? It's the hustle with the cups.
Fast hands and 3 cups. It's the old switch up, mix up where they try to put the fix up. They mess with your mind to take your money. You do that up on Fordham Road in the Bronx, you might get locked up. You do that on Wall Street, you might get rich. You do that on CNN, you might get to be the president. It says in Ephesians, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with the cosmic powers of this present darkness. Are you struggling with this darkness? How much of your struggle is in the flesh? And how much is the mind game aspect where terror is tacit, work cut out? task pit. Do you feel defeated before the game started? How do you think you feel? Is your brain where your heart is? The mind game aspect. You can try to mask it or fake it till you make it. Do you think you can hack it? Silence is where the hardest part is. Get busy, do the dance of the broken hearted. This is for tender, beautiful beings made for meaning, needing, healing, revealing the possibility of infinity and finite syntax, feeding thought and feeling, spirit leading, setting free, living word up the page. For this my bliss, I persist, forgiving and sinning and living and loving through days of rage. I offer my art, official, sacrificial epistle, God-given but man-made and largely unpaid. Ain't nothing sadder than an instrument that never gets played. But maybe what makes you the most mad is my lack of impulse control. I've been destroying rappers, devouring whole candy bars. So hungry I forget to remove the wrappers first. Then I'm like very frustrated. Sometimes I curse. If I let myself feel, I might not feel the need. Cause what I really need is love. And I don't know what's up with that. Sometimes in love you gotta fight like a suffragette. Sometimes you just believe in love shows up like snuffleupagus. God is love. God loves us. What we up against? The mind game aspect, a terrorist tactic. My work was cut. I was pink slipped, cheated, and no one listened until I thought that he did that. Tasteless racist, imposter populist, now perfectly positioned to profit from the populace. He fooled a lot of us, but now it's up to all of us.
Silence will be indicted in a private hell for those who don't fight it.
How about we try to catch up to where Lauren led off on her spirit walk, seeking that middle path like Gorbachev and love defiant, raising up Zion, her holy hymn of love. I've had it with hymns that degrade and exploit us. Hollywood and Detroit are separate but equally surveilled, cut up in districts, curtailed, algorithmically manipulated, and blackmailed. Make me pray for Kendrick and Kanye. Dear Lord, keep them curious and learn from the book of Latifah how to be constructively furious. Teach us to love with tenacity. Beloved, can you bring back? Beloved, can you bring back? Beloved, can you bring back my broken heart's capacity for faith, hope y amor a un ritmo natural y espiritual? ¿Qué tal si bailamos apretado todo sábado social? Negra, tú tienes tumbao y más sabor que el arroz pegado. Yo soy el bebé nuevo, me tienes que amar. Y si un día muero, me tienes que llorar. La vida como coro siempre tiene que cambiar, pero traigo una pasión que no se puede negar. The mind game aspect. You look fantastic. Work out. Cut. Fabulous, but do you feel needed? If so, which part is house divided, ego half-hearted? For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I don't want is what I do. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I don't want is what I do in the mind game aspect.
That which I would not, I do.
I would not do. I do.
That which I would, I don't do.
I would not do.
That which I would, I don't do.
All right. Yeah, we just listened to it. And man, I have not heard that song in a while. It has not played in my car for a while. And it's so much doper.
Thanks. Man.
You really care about your shit. You really, I mean, I can just tell you really analyzed the shit out of it. You know, really paid attention to a lot of small details that anybody who heard the original version could pick up on, which I can relate to as somebody who who drafts and drafts and drafts the shit out of what he writes. So let's talk about it. I mean, what was that?
So, for example, go ahead, bring your question.
Yeah, what was the process like making that song? You know.
Yeah, so one example is I literally do draft the expletives out of my songs. Like lots of drafts have expletives. I don't censor myself.
Okay.
But I do think it's really rare that there are cultural spaces that are just as tender as I'd like them to be, potentially, you know. So there's a joint that me and my dear friend, Ardeshir Lee, aka DJ Gonzo Jones, aka DJ Dash. You have to have at least 2 AKs.
Oh, okay. That's 2 AKs.
It's the Bronx hip hop rule.
Damn. Okay. So I only have.
You can work on yours.
Yeah, okay.
It's not immediately. It's part of the process.
Oh wait, but in high school they called me Jamie J. So do I get? Anyway,
you might want to keep people from. Well, oh no, that's great, Jimmy J. I'm glad you're knowing that. J, that's cool. So speaking of tender, kind culture, yeah, man, and yeah. So I got a joint that starts. How much time do real folk really spend up in the club? It's a crisis when our poets don't know how to speak of love. If your mixtape is shaped by how real folk live, it's got to have at least one track appropriate for the kids. And I mean, like, for real. Like, Elmo could feature on the joint. Like, Oprah could say, here's some hip-hop that I'd lift up for you to share with the kids. It's rare, man. It's so rare that, to me, that's a bold thing, you know? And so I don't say that I've never curse on a record, but I got through one. And after I was done with the first one, I realized I hadn't cursed on my first record. Cursed. I mean, I don't really even think it's. I think that's kind of a misuse. I hadn't used profanity on my first album, Code Switching, and then I was like, oh yeah, I think I was just from moment to moment looking for the most excellent expression I could find, and I if an F-bomb is ever that, I'll go with that. I actually definitely had some drafts of Mind Game Aspect that had curse words.
Maybe a curse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, because I get very frustrated.
Yeah,
sometimes I curse.
Yeah, you said that in the song.
I did. Well, actually, a narrator said that in the song.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah, we've been saying it in the singular. I keep going back and forth, but I think I want it to be the Mind Game Aspects as the title. What I say in the song is Mind Game Aspect, but I think what I'm actually doing is it's like a slightly different narrator, slightly different character, just kind of pouring out their brain, right? And then it pivots to another character, you know. So the general question is, yeah, how much of your struggle is in the flesh and how much is the mind game aspect? And then that narrator tells about what that means, the mind game aspect of the struggle of life, you know, or the struggle toward enlightenment, like we were saying before. That narrator pours out their heart and their mind about what that means for them, and then it kind of shifts to another one. And then they're kind of, I kind of think of the different, you know, the layering voices as kind of like the narrators. I totally have the image in that sequence where it's forgiving and sinning and living and loving forgiving and sinning and living and loving in Days of Rage. I was picturing like basketball, like dribbling and passing, and then in Days of Rage, there's the shot on that. I'm not good at basketball.
Yeah.
So what I can do is metaphor instead. And yeah, so this piece has gone through quite a journey, and you mentioned like how, so what are there are genres that I work with, and when I was like putting this album or starting to like upload this album, there are these boxes that ask for your genre, right? And So I think that's in some ways an uncomfortable question, but maybe also a meaningful thing to think about. And one thing I came up with is that this is handcrafted hip hop. So
Handcrafted hip hop.
yeah, so it's like, you know how manufacturing or making something can be like in the spectrum from 3D printing, you know, to like the least handcrafted
Yeah.
to, you know, like I carved this with no tools.
With my nails.
Yeah, it's rubbed the stone for enough, or no, yeah, I guess extreme, like the Grand Canyon, right, is right the most organically, but extremely artfully crafted, you know.
Well, we're using artfully.
Or a thing. One of the most artfully crafted things I've ever seen. Or you could talk about nature and humanity, right? But for me, that's compatible with being Christian because God is wild. Actually, the God of the Bible is wild, not as opposed to artificial, right? But this piece, this album, and my last album have been a learning process, and I think I kind of it's kind of like the first album was kind of like high school, and maybe this was like finishing a college degree in terms of like in code switching. I kind of had this review of areas of study that, from my point of view, were my essential curriculum, you know, because I was looking back at my notebooks and I realized there were these clusters of songs. There was Borincana, there was Boricua roots music, there was hip hop joints or rhymes, you know, and there were gospel driven things. And on code switching, I kind of had this workout, you know, I worked myself out and developed as strongly as I could. Well, I think I had a really strong gospel joint on the album, and I think I did some things with Bomba en Plena that reflected a unique, just affirmed the tradition, affirmed how essential Bomba and then Plena have been to giving me a voice, a sense of purpose. And then I was trying to, so I think I did pretty well in those courses, to use the high school metaphor. And then I couldn't figure out if I was doing a spoken word or a rap program, right? And that's kind of okay. I like the rap oriented stuff that's on code switching, but through both albums I've been learning as I went, you know? And on this album, it's about that learning more openly, more directly, right? It's meta-cognitive, right? It's So the particular process for this song was stupid arduous. I think I had more versions of this song than anything I've ever done.
Is it because it's the title track, it means a lot to you, or is it just getting stuck in the mind game aspect?
Yeah, I think it's especially the second one, because I didn't know it was the title track at first, right? But beware of, you know, titling anything like "This will mess with your head," you know, because it might mess with your head.
Yeah. Okay.
and the other thing was that I had this notion that I was gonna work with a beat. So it's basic a beat. A beat that my friend DJ Gonzo Jones had made. But I also, I don't know, the song seemed very meaningful, and it just became kind of, on the one hand, trying to speak to all the ways, all the major kind of mind games that I feel like I've been wrestling with, try to get to a gospel, get to a good news, you know, at the end of that, through that struggle, you know, and try to just squeeze all the juice out of the lemon of, maybe not lemon, all the juice out of the mango, I don't know, out of the beat that DJ Dash had given me, because I liked it, but I also had, I don't know why, I kind of took that beat as an opportunity to test my strength, to, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of layers that I added musically, interacting with that beat that Dash had started.
Okay, it's there's a lot there. I mean, I can already tell with just following that sort of stream of consciousness that, you know, how analytical you can be, and I feel that because I'm very similar in my writing, you know, and I think that's why we started that little group of like Bronx educators here at BCC, the Bronx Overthinkers Society. Shout out to that group, to the other members, and you know,
we can be Xbox, the Xbox. Okay, be Xbox.
Okay, well, sure. well, we'll think about that. And you know, it's like that's the life of the artist. I think maybe there's a certain, as you would put it, as you mentioned, like neural diversity, a particular type of neural profiles that maybe are given, are more likely to pursue certain aspects of art. And so historically we can talk about, you know, how many artists are bipolar, and I think, you know, Beethoven and Edgar Poe, and I'm sure there are many examples. So that's dope. So like let's talk about contemporary music. Like who inspires you? You already mentioned Miranda. Got to pick somebody else.
Yeah.
So who inspires you?
Okay. Should I just be? I'm just gonna say Boricuas. No. But yeah. Sí. So residente y visitante de Calle 13. If you can't speak Spanish, learn Spanish if you like hip hop, because the best rapper alive is Residente de Calle 13.
Okay,
So,
I haven't heard it, but I mean that's I'll listen to it. That's high praise.
Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely inspiring. And then Tijo, who are, I don't really know how to say her name. I think it's French, Tijo, but she's
How do you spell it?
Chilena.
I can tell you.
Tijoux.
Tijoux.
Okay, good.
Tijoux.
Good, because I have a song where I rhyme it with the word you, so.
You're good.
But I think with rap, it's the art of if you can make it rhyme, then you get away with it. But
True. Although if it's a foreign word, and you
and
will look
like
uneducated.
and you're insulting somebody you want to be.
Well, that's true.
Big upping also,
Okay.
respecting, right? Yeah. So Anantiju, those and Agape, aka Dave Shearer.
AKA God's love.
Yes, aka God's love, man. So yeah, talk about
Not agape.
not a Gabe.
Sorry.
I think his. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably half of his outreach. It
Trying
has
to
be
explain it's not a gape.
Yeah.
Why is your rap name a gape? I'm trying to understand the metaphor.
Because after the battle, the whole audience is like,
yeah, that's what it
they
is.
were staring agape. Agape. So he is a rapper with a clear mission. And he's been a friend and mentor to mine, and he's crazy skilled also, and he's got lots of albums out, and they range from I did, yeah,
I appreciate it.
They range from the kind of confessional to the kind songs that are kind of trying to minister to songs that are about that teach, and songs that adjure, songs that with a prophetic like critique, right? Songs that preach. That's not a bad word in my vocabulary. So yeah, I think the rappers that are very meaningful for me, that I listen to again and again. I've been listening. Queen Latifah. I've been listening to more again. Lauryn Hill. I've been listening to. But yeah, people who have some sense of belief, and then some sense of struggle. And so that's what the part of the song that took the longest dealt with that question, right? So it had a bunch of versions. I think the last version you heard, I was proud of. I liked this a lot, but it was, how about we try to catch up to where Lauren left? How about we try to catch up to where Lauren left off on her spirit walk, seeking that middle path like Gorbachev with songs of freedom by any music necessary? Because our people face drama like Boris good enough, but enough is never enough for what's trying to exploit us. Hollywood and Detroit are separate but equally surveilled, cut into districts curtailed, algorithmically blackmailed. And then it was, I'll just leave out. Well, then it was blackmailed. I'm like Kanye in my curiosity, except I'm still curious. Like Barack alone with Michelle, I confess I am furious. That was the draft, and I liked that. But that didn't pass my more excellent standard test, man. I know it's such a mild beef, right? But I was beefing.
But you felt bad about it.
I felt bad about that beef. It is the most mild beef. And I know it, on the off chance that Lin-Manuel Miranda sees this, he's like, hey man, you burned me. But I said I was kidding right after it. So I think it doesn't count.
It's okay. I'm pretty sure Kanye can deal with it.
And Lin-Manuel, yeah. I don't know, man.
He's like,
the thing I'm most clear about is
I
that
still have like millions of dollars.
That's what I'm most clear about. But so in this version, which I do feel quite good about, it's continuously focused on that first thought, right? So in a sense, it's thesis driven, right? I'm holding myself in that part of the song to one narrator trying to explore one thought out to a blessing, right? It's like Jacob wrestles with the angel and he says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And so now in the final version, it's focused on Lauren the whole time, really, right? And it's, I before it was where Lauren left off, but now it's where Lauren, how about we try to catch up to where Lauren led off? Very small change, but the notion is like, well, she's been on her journey, right? She, she stepped away from commercial record industry for a while, but she's been on her journey. And a part of what she identified as her journey was, well, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is all about love, right? There are these conversations with like high school kids about what's love, right? That are mixed in, and an amazing song in the album is To Zion, right? To her child. And so anyhow, how about we try to catch up to where Lauren led off on her spirit walk, seeking that middle path like Gorbachev to raise up Zion with love defiant. Her holy hymn of love. And that I realized was also an intersection with Caballeros. You saw Caballeros, right?
I love Caballeros, yeah.
Okay. And so Caballeros is this interrogation of machismo and struggle for self-determination of people who feel the need to identify with Latino masculinities, and examining the notion that my father tried to model of a non-oppressive machismo, just seeing machismo as a just male energy and just like a force in the universe, and just that you can make peace with, that it doesn't have to be dominant over anything. And so that's, anyhow, that's what in 16 bars I explore way quicker than I could any other way on those questions about looking about like, what is it that I felt like I learned from the two women rappers that I acknowledge in those 16 bars, Queen Latifah and Lauryn Hill, and contrasting the kind of holy hymn, right? So this hymn with two meanings, right? So she's lifting a song of praise, but she's also throughout the record contesting the way that masculinity had and still is normally constructed in commercial hip hop, and the way that toxified masculinity makes I think I'm gonna curse.
Drums.
Shitty.
No, go ahead, yeah.
makes a yeah, I said it, okay. But makes a toxic environment for everybody. Makes even including for the dudes, right? And so like her love of her man-child is to me tied to how she, Queen Latifah, many other women rappers like Anna Tijoux have been like, loving men, right? Pro man, but wanting to clear the room of sexist BS in a way that makes a better space for everybody, really. Anyhow, that's that 16 bars has so much in it. It went through so many versions, and little things that I rolled out for different reasons. Because those are kind of the 16 bars that are. Then it's always a narrator. I think as a writer, it's cool I'd always claim that. It's never exactly me, but that's the narrator that's the closest to me in those 16 bars. I think what I'd actually like to go to next is a song that is very contrasting in terms of how the process was, but kind of similar in the themes. I would like to go to Locura.
Soy un hombre exigente, fino, fuerte. Todos quieren saber el secreto de mi muerte. Okay, I'll tell you. It's pobreza. Yes, I am a meta. I believe I am best, but I wish I could do better. Teach me the law, I'll follow it to the letter. The escasez that I face es una cosa dura. Ojalá que mi musa me trata con ternura, que ustedes me soportan con un poco de futura. My face es cosa dura. Ojalá que mi musa me trata con ternura, que ustedes me soportarán un poquito de locura.
Qué locura, caballero. So that song was part of the process of DJ Dash and I working on ideas, following an invitation from a hip-hop artist who's a mutual friend of ours.
Seco, 1844?
Seco 1844, yo. And he has this amazing idea that making art should be relaxing. Think about that, my writer friend.
Enjoying art should definitely be. But I mean, yeah, it could be stressful too. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. But so he had that concept, and so he invited us to work on a lo-fi track, and so that was one of Dash's cooking sessions on that line. So the beat. So in that sense, it's similar to the mind game aspect, except it's also an opposite workflow to the mind game aspect. So in the future, I really want to move toward more of that kind of a workflow, because, bro, I just got so many songs. And so far, my process with the songs with the songs that I've actually released, and that I've shared without releasing as recordings that you could find online, has been centered on learning. I try to learn as much as I can from the process, and then end up with the strongest song in end product possible, you know? But I write a lot. I really write a lot. And, yeah, so I've got, 40 notebooks like this filled with, song lyrics and stuff. And, yeah, it's about 500 songs that I could at least, if you just put me in front of a mic, I could sing or I could rap, you know?
That's dope.
I guess, yes, it's a blessing. Praise God. I am grateful. In a sense, that's the thing I most wanted in life. I wanted health and joyful, loving relationships from my family, with my family. I wanted to live in the Bronx, and I wanted friends like this guy, and I wanted to make music, you know, and so I'm grateful to have made those things. But the thing is, I don't have much I don't have any formal training in music except for singing. And that was mostly high school, really. So everything else, I've been making se hace el camino al andar. I've been making the path by walking, you know. And that's cool. I've learned a lot from that. Anyone who would like to give me a grant for a residency, I could learn more quicker. That'd be cool. But
anybody who wants to send me money, I'm
yes,
cool with that
that's all. That's welcome. But I would like to try to see if I can get the right workflow going with help from friends, with help from co-conspirators, collaborators, where I could just get share as much as possible, because the truth is, rather than focusing on how much can I learn from the process of working on this one particular piece, like Agape says, no more life in a bubble. What if Christian artists could be honest in their struggle, and just kind of go ahead and publish my journey, you know, my steps along the way. And so anyhow, that Dash came back to me with that song, and it was, I thought, a really strong illustration of how easy a workflow could be. So rather than me agonizing for so many versions as I did on the mind game aspects on the single, I'd shared with Dash some voice memos on my phone.
Did
related
they sound
to this
a little
idea.
bit like locura?
Well, no, it had. And actually, he took little pieces out from it, you know, and so he did his thing with it, and he digitally manipulated the voice a little bit and added noise to the track so that the noise in the background of my recording was like a compositional element, you know. And then he gave it back to me, and then I wanted to adjust the levels a little bit, and I added in actually more background noise. So that's, yes, the subway conductor saying, I think he's saying, the robo subway conductor, the male voice saying, transfer is also available to.
But it doesn't tell you where.
He does it, right?
Which totally reminds me.
Locura.
It is locura. And it reminds me of the Van Gogh painting where it has a road, but it doesn't lead anywhere.
Whoa, bro.
And
I feel you.
I'm just making sure you have both of your ears right now.
Yeah, I do. But, so anyhow, I'd like to try to move with help from friends. I'd like to try to move toward more of that kind of workflow. I probably won't normally be recording tracks on the subway, but.
Although that could be a fun Saturday activity.
Perhaps, yeah. Bueno, de la Guagua, it seems like my recording studio should be just on the BX1 or 2. Or any bus, but so those two songs kind of represent opposite sides, opposite approaches to workflow, and it's really exciting and liberating for me to realize that I can, with help, have strong work that I hope can bless an audience through either approach.
I will totally listen to your locura. No problem.
Cool. Thank you, brother. So, I one other thing that, genres. Here's a couple other thoughts I had on genre. Well, I do think it's folk music in the sense that I was like trying to screen the album as I was like in line at Rite Aid, had my earbuds in, but I was on Burnside Avenue and there was like there were like conversations happening all around me. And I was like, I'd rather listen to my people. And I realized in that moment that all of my songs are a part of, well, I came to have a voice, definitely, as like a gift from human communities that are profoundly beloved for me, starting with Boricua, African-rooted styles like bomba, plena, and danza. And yeah, so in that sense, it's folk music. It's music from the people, right? That's one thought. Yeah, that's one other thought I got.
What did you write? From
the
people,
for the people,
it's
or
like the
maybe
original FUBU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the people, for the people. And so that's very influenced by something that the great choreographer Alvin Ailey would teach, that dance comes from the people. And so a dancer's job is or choreographer's job is to kind of see how the people move and put that onto a dancer's body. And kind of how can you lift that? How can you lift that to the highest level of artistry possible, and then give it back to the people, so the people can see how beautiful the people are, see how beautiful they are, how beautiful we are.
I think that's beautiful, but I'm biased on the other person. So
I hear that.
Yeah, okay.
So I think I'd like to listen to a little section of the song "Free." That is the most crazy part.
Why can't we be free? Free like me when I'm in the zone and I'm zoning out. Whoa, whoa. Why can't we be free? Why can't we be free? Free. Why can't we be free? Why can't we be free? Free. This distracted belly. Why can't we be free? Why can't we be aggressively was the second one. Why can't we be free? Why can't we be free? Why can't we be free? Why can't we be free?
Education is not simply the filling of a pail. It is also the lighting of a fire.
Of fire. Of fire. Of fire.
So you said you had 20 tracks on that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I just kept adding tracks till my computer crashed.
Yeah, until it said, no mas.
Yeah,
Tired of your locura.
man. I was making the path by walking blindfolded,
Through the streets of the Bronx.
through the streets of the Bronx. By listening, I was figuring out the limits of what my voice could do, and how well I could actualize the things I was hearing in my head musically. And then also wrestling with some of my neurodiversity. So I've been very inspired by the way that the Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg has openly talked about her autism and talked about her, I'm not sure, I think she's in the autism spectrum, but talked about her neurodiversity. And it occurred to me that, like, if she didn't talk about it, she'd kind of have more of a risk of people using it against her, But when she does talk about it, there's such power in her honest vulnerability, And I don't think of my neurodiversity the way she describes it. She describes hers as a superpower. That's not been a reality for me. But since elementary school, I knew I was often a kind of round peg in a square hole, that I was not fitting into the expectations of the educational system, and
it would be difficult to get through doors as well.
Yeah, and my teacher. But so there was this constant comment about this disconnect between performance and potential, right? And toward the end of high school, I was finally diagnosed with ADHD. And also, at that time, depression and anxiety and disorders. And it was insightful for me to learn about ADHD. And this song was kind of a offering to the world of my sense of life inside of a ADHD person, right? And I've more recently, so I tried medication and therapy in college, for my ADHD with therapist with a psychiatrist for a while. But I didn't stick to a treatment plan, right? I think actually studying dance was a kind of biofeedback treatment for me. I found that once I had broken a sweat, I could focus. And dance.
There definitely is something to that. Not just for
sure,
that particular type of neurodiversity, but look, I haven't read the studies, but I've heard of many studies that show, just better recall with like aerobic exercise, just activating the mind.
So, Free is a reflection on that ADHD journey, and but in the last few years, I learned about the executive functions model, theoretical model of ADHD, and it made so much more sense to me than the other explanations I'd had in college, and I finally understood why a stimulant could help me calm down. And so the executive functions model is basically that you, I heard this from Jessica, sorry, I don't know how to say her last name, McCabe, from howtoadhd.com. It's like you have a race car engine with go-kart brakes, right? And a go-kart steering wheel, really, too. But so it's a deficit in the level of development of the thinking parts of the brain compared to the doing parts of the brain, the performance parts of the brain, right? And the way you see that from the outside has to do with control of attention, not being able to regulate attention. But under the hood, that's what's going on. And anyhow, so learning about that from howtoadhd.com, from Dr. Russell Barkley, his writing and research led me to want to get under treatment again for ADHD. And I definitely have found benefit to that. I don't know if I'm quite in the ideal treatment setup yet, but both talk therapy and medication have been transformative for me. And when I went back into treatment, I think you'll love this. A very memorable line from my therapist after he put me through this diagnostic battery, right? And you're like, so what do I got, doc? What are the results, right? And I was disturbed to hear something I hadn't heard discussed from shrinks before, talking about me at least. This last time I was also, and I'm currently under treatment for mood disorder as well as ADHD. It's possible that going through these ups and downs that you experience in life as an ADHD person kind of built or exacerbated that anxiety and depression I'd had when I was younger into mood disorder. But so that's manic depression. That's type 2 manic depression, hypomanic. And that feels very scary to say publicly, but I think it shouldn't be. And it's definitely treatable, and it's not something that makes anybody dangerous, right? But for me, if I could just have a cerebral only explanation of my problems, that feels safer, and my therapist has been, forcing me to say that no, emotion is a part of it too, and emotion's a huge part of the experience of ADHD too, because the most basic executive function is self-soothing, being able to calm yourself down. So free for me has always been about exploring the experience of ADHD. And now, I can kind of affirm that the other songs are honestly through narrators, not literally my thoughts, not literally my experience, but through little bits of artistic license, going there, through to the full emotional extremes that I do experience, and that my therapist calls mood disorder, which led to a cool possible album title, Hypomanic and Rising.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I mean that was a pretty deep exploration into that song, and for people listening, I mean they definitely have a sense of like how, like I'll ask you one question about like your song and like 15 minutes later, you finish.
Yeah, bro.
And it's really cool, honestly, because I mean, I can guess some of that stuff, but only knowing you, and yet I feel like it's just a really deep song, and it's a lot richer now that having heard all that. And I thank you for having the courage to say the things that you have said, to have disclosed the things that you have disclosed, because neurodiversity does need to be destigmatized.
Thank you, bro.
It's actually, I think Andrew Yang actually, who's running for president, I think he talks about that because he has a son that was born with autism, I believe. And one thing he says is that, paradoxically, neural diversity, or being neurologically, this word is stigmatized, but it's the one that comes to my head.
Sure.
Abnormal is actually pretty normal.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, just something to think about, because I like to joke around a bit, but this is a pretty important point. Yeah, and I haven't talked about it on the podcast, and maybe at some point I will. With you, it seems it would be a comfortable sort of way to do it, but maybe I'll save it for another podcast. But I went through significant depression. I was suicidal for an amount of time, and that's something that I needed to address. In a holistic way, and it's like the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that it can get pretty close to killing you, but if it doesn't, you can actually become more psychologically resilient if you take the right approach. If you that might not be true for everyone and their conditions, but I was able to again, in a holistic way, I looked at my life and sort of looked at everything that might have caused it, and tried to come up with an approach that sort of overcompensates and tries to really protect the sort of my psychological well-being. And another thing that I want to say is a lot of these things are stigmatized, but for something like depression, I feel that often depression is, from an evolutionary perspective, it's perfectly normal, and sometimes people don't understand what's happening, as you said, under the surface. And I don't mean just psychologically, but what you're dealing with, how you're dealing with it, maybe your childhood, the things in your life, your work, and then sort of what you're eating can affect depression as well. So anyway, I wanted to say that.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I've definitely been on it. This wellness journey that I've been on, that's parallel the question at the heart of the mind game aspect, right? How much of your struggle is in the flesh, and how much is the mind game aspects?
Love to whisper. It goes really well. So let's do.
It sounded overly creepy when I said the flesh that time. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, now that you put that into my head, it is.
Sorry.
So what do you want to leave the people with? Do you want to tell them your website? Tell them whatever you have. I know you have an Instagram. Follow you on that. I know you have Twitter. And I've been trying to get you to do something like touristy. Touristy? I don't think I'm using the right word. Tour-based. But that's up to you. I just think I see a lot of people using what they know, and you're so knowledgeable about the streets. Like, I can totally see myself either listening to a podcast that you do that's based on like a specific neighborhood in the Bronx, or a particular street, a particular structure, whatever, or watching it on YouTube and learning more about the Bronx and feeling more cultured.
Thanks, bro.
Which, you have mad culture, bro.
For
somebody who's half German, you feel more Latino than I do.
Well, but right, there's no racial. It's the glory of la raza cósmica, right?
Yes.
Man, the la gente mestiza, right? Is that there's no, and in its heart, the beauty of nuestra gente latinoamericana is our diversity, and so there's no. Anyhow, you're as Latino as you want to be, and actually
more Native American than you.
Let me share one thought about that. Yeah, no, cool, and yeah, man, love it. Love all of how you actualize your identity, and can actualize, especially if you can actualize your history in a way that moves toward enlightenment, moves toward freedom, peace, joy.
Yeah. I mean, I was kidding around, but for some people, being Latino is very much tied into having native blood. For others, whether that's wrong or right? And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Latinos, Latinas, Latinx. I might start using Latinx, I don't know, because I think, it is a good point that some of us don't define ourselves, don't identify with a specific gender, and that's cool. I don't want to, say that you are, you have to check one box or the other.
Yeah.
So one thing that's really beautiful about being Latino, Latinx, is just that, that amalgam, that amorphousness, the fact that it's not really a race, it is a hodgepodge of stuff, of African culture, of Native American culture, of European culture, and so on. And it's beautiful, and we tend to be mixed people, and I think racism really starts to go away when you start finding out that, you are everything. You are the world. And so I hope that in the future we move in that direction.
So I'd love to, maybe there's a whole other podcast conversation in this, but I think at the heart of that question about what some Latino, I think especially Chicano activists call La Raza Cósmica, right? One of the insights of experiencing syncretic identity and identity born of mestizaje, of racial cultural mixing, is that you get to really live in the radical notion. Gloria Steinem is reported to have said that feminism is the radical notion that women are people, and so you get to kind of live into this radical notion that Native peoples of the Americas are people, and it shouldn't be a radical notion. But the reality is that La Conquista didn't just use guns, germs, and steel. Another key weapon for all of the imperial conquests that came out of Europe were these fairy tale ideologies of white supremacy, right? So, the radical notion that people who speak Spanish are people, that Native peoples of the Americas are people, that African diaspora people are people. And we share so much common personhood that we can become one people, that we can connect, and we have connected so deeply, complexly, it's not utopian, but that radical notion that we are one people is pretty powerful. But the first step before you can get into that is just affirming personhood. So my thought is that there was one main virtue of Latino, which I think many, because actually in my house, Hispanic was fine. And in Spanish, Hispano is probably still about as common as Latino, So, and there's just like there's 2 letters difference, right? So they're closely related. One virtue of Latino or Latinoamericano, a longer version of it, or Latinoamericana, was you force gringos to speak Spanish. You force gringos to speak Spanish, and not just that Spanish is virtuous. I think it is. Latin American Spanishes are virtuous. Caribeño Spanishes are virtuous, but that you add diversity to a community. You challenge monolingualism and monoculturalism by having an actual Spanish language word that's fully pronounceable with native Spanish phonemes, Latino. Because of that, I'd be sad. I'd be sad if Latinx, or I don't see Latinx as playing that function. It clearly doesn't. And I think you can see it as cultural imperialism because it is it's Anglo thinking. being imposed on Spanish. So here's my radical proposal.
Sure.
I've read that in the Lenape language, do you know what Lenape means?
No.
I don't know if this is true, but I think I read it on Wikipedia. But what I read is that Lenape means the people.
I think I've heard that too, yeah.
Let's call ourselves gente. I'm gente. It's ungrammatical, but it's Spanish. I'm gente. Gente communities. This is what African Americans and gente are demanding in the South Bronx today. That seems like a really beautiful option to me. I've been thinking about it a lot.
I can tell.
This is the first time I've shared it out loud,
sometimes,
live on the Jim Nog Pod.
I think that's nice.
The word's the same or very similar in Portuguese also. So we've got most of the Americas covered.
What is it in Portuguese?
It's spelled the same.
Yeah, I think it's gente. Yeah, I mean, you do hear La Raza sometimes, and it's similar to that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. I didn't think about that when it comes to Latinx. Although I fear,
but I affirm the gender binary as problematic, and I affirm that the gender binary is problematic, and absolutely the idea that all the women are like erased, you know. But the thing is, bro, Latin is problematic. Hispanic is problematic. We are naming ourselves for which country conquered us, and that's immensely problematic. Somos gente. That's my thought, and I would choose gente rather than pueblo because it's a feminine noun. So I'm taking a slight.
I mean, you know what I have
option.
thought of? I've actually, and this has nothing to do with some sort of social justice cause, but rather just from a grammatical perspective and how much I like languages like English and Japanese that don't have gender is like getting rid of gender in the Romance languages. It's a pipe dream.
So Latini,
but
no Latini, that's available.
Exactly. We don't choose the A, we don't choose the O. Let's choose something else. Let's go with
and don't go with
I.
a phoneme that doesn't exist in Spanish. I'm totally cool with Latini too, but the thing is, the truth is Latin has always been problematic, and these are just versions of Latin. So I think it's great if it forces a crisis of saying, my God, why are we naming ourselves after the language of the Roman Empire?
Sure, but
what
we
the
also
heck does that mean?
Yeah, but we also speak, their language. So I mean, and we also are them to some extent. Most
not the Roman Empire.
Many.
That would be that's an argument for Hispano, bro.
Okay, I hear what you're saying with Latino, but it's an extension of that culture. The perspective I'm trying to use. I know that we're disagreeing here, and we're trying to draw close.
That's cool.
And
this might be a different podcast.
Yeah, actually, this is really interesting. Maybe people will skip and go to the end. But for me, it's like, listen, and all the people talking about cultural appropriation, and I get that we're going to see.
I guess Hispanic would be the degendered version. Hispanic.
Yeah, we're very ADHD at this point.
Sorry.
So. Damn, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. There are songs, Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
Who else? Joyner and Lucas have songs called ADHD, and I wanted to ask you about that. That's a tangent. Back to the original tangent. The cultural appropriation stuff. So, listen, man. That's culture. Okay?
Yeah.
That's how culture works. Is we learn things from other people.
Yeah.
We grow. We make it different. We make it our own, and that is what Hispanic culture, is. It's an amalgam, and it's beautiful because it's an amalgam, and we recognize that, Mangu and Mafongu, okay, they probably come from Africa, and then all right, we speak Spanish. Some people don't like that because of what the Spaniards did, and I hear you. Historically, a lot of things Columbus did were horrible.
Well,
But-
and as Seco points out, Seco,
We can say
Sorry.
Sigo or Seco, yeah.
well, generations of people struggled to not be ruled by Spain, right? I mean, Spain did not leave willingly. Spain, right?
No
Okay,
empire
so,
leaves
yeah,
willingly.
yeah.
Yeah. I think we can't, because of our oppression, hate people based on race or identity. And I think that's where identity politics goes wrong. I think that was sort of the point that I was trying to make on that podcast, Whitish. Check it out. One person was there, but it was so controversial, apparently, that one person who participated was like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't like what I said. And I had to sort of edit the person out. Unfortunately, he's a good dude, but I understand. Like, I've had podcasts where I say things and I'm like, sound like an idiot or whatever. Live and learn. But I think that's just the point, you know. So I'll say, you know, a final point, and then you can respond to it, and we'll leave it at that. But my point is just culture is about taking things that work and that's sort of a response to cultural appropriation. You know, it's hard to trace back certain things. Like one example of cultural appropriation that people bring up is dreadlocks. And I've looked into this, and you know, the oldest extant records of dreadlocks, I think, go back to ancient India. You know, and then people argue that the Minoan civilization, you know, which seminal in Western civilization, that they also did dreadlocks. You know, I don't know, but I'm saying it's hard to trace things, and so let's not get, you know, possessive about, you know, this is this is my thing, and you can't do it because I don't think that's how culture works. I don't think that's even what you want. Anyway, let's not hate people because we label them as the oppressor, or you know, just we speak Spanish, and the Spanish did terrible things, but you know, it's also part of us. It's also part of who we are. You know, many Dominicans and Caribbean people and South American people practice Catholicism and other things.
They've
you know?
they've even gotten good at it. Been practicing so long.
Anyway, I'm sure it's much more complex than that, but I'll leave it at that. And then,
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, man. Let's take it back to costly grace. Yeah, culture is like that. And grace is this free gift, but I'd say for it to be authentic, it's also costly. So if an awareness of cultural, I think it is very natural for humans to be influenced by other humans. I think that reality can and should very naturally lead people to feel a sense of interconnectedness, and even in some cases indebtedness. And I think Dr. King has a lot of ideas that contextualize this really well. His prepared remarks at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom weren't focused on "I have a dream." That was something that was added. It's a speech he had done before, and Mahalia Jackson reportedly said, "Tell him about your dream," because she was worried the audience was not with him enough. But the core of his speech was that the thesis was that the United States Declaration of Independence, declaring all people created equal, was a promissory note, right? And when African Americans went to cash that promissory note, it came back stated insufficient funds. That was the thesis of his speech, really. And well, but he contextualizes that within a dream, right? And that's gracious, right? But it is also costly, right? I think that for me, recognizing that that bomba plena, gospel, hip hop, all are gifts of African people, movements that have been formed originally and led by people of the African diaspora. It's part of why I would advocate for reparations for historic injustices. Because I feel like that's not, I mean, even if there were no historic injustice, they'd just pay for hip hop, right? you know what I'm saying? Right.
P. Diddy's doing all right.
Yeah, but hardly any of the first generation of Bronx rappers got rich, right? Yeah, but so the literal math of how you work that out, it's complex, but it's and there are, I think, lots of different good ideas about how to look at it. But South Africa did a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now I think it's Guinea. They recently got rid of their dictator, and they're doing a Truth, Reconciliation, and Reparations Commission.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I feel like if we can just say yes, and if we can kind of deepen dialogues where we just notice what Dr. King called this, right? Caught up inextricably in one great web of destiny and one fabric of mutuality. Then you can be for social justice without having to be a warrior.
Although some people want to be.
That's gangster. That's cool. That's the thing.
Social justice.
That's the thing. That's cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned reparations, and we'll save that for another podcast. But
all right.
I think that makes sense. And you're right. The math is really hard. I've given it some thought, and I think that maybe empowering Black-owned businesses or certain communities, empowering those communities, scholarships. I feel that a little bit more than sending a check to. I'm not even sure who. How would you even?
Well, I mean, So I think Ta-Nehisi Coates argues this, or he's mentioned this argument, but another way to put it is that a need for reparations would be another reason why it's just fair and necessary for us to have healthcare and education and housing and guaranteed minimum income as rights in this country, because a lot of people have been wronged in a variety of ways, and some people get rich harmlessly. I don't think Oprah hurt that many people on her way up, as far as we know. So some people get rich constructively, but there are some types of wealth getting that are extractive, that are abusive. There's a lot of that, right? And so just an awareness of that, and awareness of how widespread the suffering has been, I think for me is a great reason to say, that basic needs should be human rights, and we cover a lot of the pain and grievance in that way.
That's
and
beautiful.
then if we need deeper then we can have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and add the reparations part, but no one. You're talking about it from a little more of a free place, right? No one's saying I need this or I have no future. We say yes. There's a place for everyone in the future first.
Yeah, and I think when you do things like that, I know I mentioned Andrew Yang already.
Mm-hmm.
I'll mention him one more time because he makes the point that, and I know I'm going to come off as the biggest Andrew Yang fan, and I do like him. And he says interesting things about the value-added tax and different things that maybe other politicians aren't talking about.
Yeah.
But so one thing he talks about is UBI, Universal Basic Income, and his idea is that that $1,000 a month dividend, freedom dividend, is it's going to help those who were disenfranchised the most.
Yeah.
Those who are rich, it's not going to help them that much. An extra $1,000 for pick your evil billionaire, and that's a joke, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not. It doesn't make a difference. It's not important.
Yeah.
But that $1,000 for somebody
But
who's really struggling.
you give it to everybody because the goal is to cultivate solidarity. And
if we're going to call this capitalism, if we're going to call this a country that values competition, we should, as most social democracies try to do, is make it a fairer competition. And sort of, elevate those who are like near the bottom, and maybe those who have a lot, maybe sort of smooth out those extremes a little bit to make it fairer.
Yeah, I feel you. I like, I'm feeling the burn. I love my girl AOC. I love my man Bernie Sanders.
Me too.
But yeah, I think that maybe the strongest argument for the life work of Bernie is the progressives that are running for president right now. I think it's unimaginable that we would have this many progressives having this much impact and getting this much attention without this bizarre thing that happened from this lifelong democratic socialist, anti-racist, anti-sexist activist with the crazy hair.
Yeah. How old is he? 78 or something?
Yeah, he was 78. But especially the fact that he dared to run for president in 2016, and then so many people got so excited, is just a dramatic illustration of what the Bernie 2020 campaign is trying to say about the potential impact of a political revolution, of a social movement. I think Yang, although he's definitely a capitalist and he's doing his own thing, but that notion that the guaranteed minimum income goes for everybody, that does come from a socialist solidarity tradition, which is different than the means testing benefits that only go for the poor, and you set up this politics where there's like resentment. Oh, how come that doesn't benefit me too?
I mean, the way he puts it is, it's capitalism where you don't start at zero.
Yeah, with guardrails, right? So not only is it more fair, it's also that it's not gladiatorial combat. right?
Yeah. I mean, we could.
I think that's why guaranteed minimum income would have to be combined with free healthcare, free college, affordable
I don't
housing.
think that's.
It's no, and that's not Yang necessarily.
Well, it depends what exactly we're talking about.
But what I'm saying is that not you know what I mean by not gladiatorial combat?
A fight to the death.
Yeah, it's not a fight to the
Although
death.
I hear that those comments were not always a fight to the death. But
That's good to know.
I guess.
I feel. Oh, you know what? You can call me Latin now. I feel better.
You feel better.
I feel better about it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, James.
It wasn't
extraordinary
quite-
educator.
Wasn't quite as barbaric as. No, it was pretty barbaric. Yeah.
Rome, not quite as barbaric as you thought it was.
Yeah. No, well, it depends
Ding,
sometimes on the emperor. Okay.
We are the Bronx Overthinkers Society.
Booyah. Leave them with your email and sorry.
Oh,
Actually, you don't need to share email, but your website and anything else.
something at Gmail. Hey, yeah. So please stay in touch. I am Marcos de la Guagua. I have been open about my struggle here. I've got a lot that I'd like to share. The best thing you could do if you'd like to be a part of the journey and hear the music and be a part of the process is visit marcosdelaguagua.com and leave your email there. Okay? So it'll say sign up for the newsletter. marcosdelaguagua.com, marcosdelaguagua.com. Peace.
Music for Nog Pod provided by Marcos de la Guagua. Guagua is spelled Guagua. Art by Seco 1844. Seco is Seko. My website, which contains news, bios, social media links, a bibliography, a blog, a podcast page, and a press page, is jamesnoguera.com. Noguera is Noguera. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jimnog, that's JIMNOG, or donate on patreon.com/Jimnog. And thank you for your interest.